throughout the video to give you some important features or salient features from a video to classify or predict for the task you are performing. And yeah, this was introduced in 2015, but at that time it was a very expensive model because you have already a kernel which is traversing throughout the image as well as in the time. So the input to this kind of networks are videos and not only the images. So you have something around 16 frames of images of size maybe 112 cross 112, and they are input to your network. And the kernels will traverse through all these frames in time and in space and give you some features. So they are very costly in terms of the number of training parameters. So later on in 2017, uh, Google came up with Google DeepMind, I would say. They came up with this network called I3D. And then most of the video-based networks are based on this I3D network, which is a kind of fabrication that has been done with this C3D model. So let's see what is this I3D model. But before going into I3D, I will just recap two concepts that have been introduced in the second lecture, I guess, by Abhijit. And the first one is network in networks. Network in networks is nothing but 1D convolutions. What does this 1D convolutions do? So if you have studied machine learning, you are aware with this concept PCA. PCA is something called used for dimension reduction. And you try to project the features in the direction of most variance in the data. So in neural networks, we also try to do this kind of feature reduction in order to have less number of parameters into your neural nets, because it's not convenient that you propose some kind of networks, you carry on the task you are performing, but at the same time you need to make sure that they are deployed in real time. And for real time applications you need optimized solutions, and for optimized solutions you need optimization across number of parameters or inference time. So that's why this network in networks, what they does is, let's say you have a 28 cross 28 convolutional feature map and 192 is the channel size. If you want to apply a 5 cross 5 convolution, if you want to directly apply a 5 cross 5 convolution on this convolutional feature map, the size of this filter should be 5 cross 5 cross 192. And you need some output of 28 cross 28 cross 32. In order to have this size 32 across channel, you need 32 filters of 5 cross 5. And the size of the filters will be 5 cross 5 cross 192. It should match with the incoming channel size. So what will be the computational cost? The computational cost will be very high. It will be something around 28 cross 28 cross 192, because that's the channel size, into 5 cross 5 cross 192. So that will be very high. Now in this paper, Network in Networks, they proposed something that you squeeze the features. So they call this bottleneck. That means you try to squeeze the features into some latent space where you don't change the meaning of the features. If it is an image, it will have image. It will still be an image, but the channel size will be reduced, and it will only carry the most important information. So what they do is, instead of directly applying this 5 cross 5 convolutional operations in the original feature map, they try to first invoke a 1 cross 1 convolution. The channel size should be 192 in order to match the incoming channel size. And the number of filters is like 16. That means the outcoming channel size will be now 28 cross 28 cross 16. So you will get a feature map of 28 cross 28 cross 16. And what will be the computational cost to do this operation? 28 cross 28 cross 16, because 16 is the C out, that is the channel that you are getting out of your this operation, 1 cross 1 operation, into 1 cross 1, because that's the size of your kernels, into 192. This is the incoming channel size that you have. So this is something around 2.4 million 2.4 million parameters you have. So after this, in this squeezed convolutional feature map, you apply this 5 cross 5 convolution. So the filter size will be 5 cross 5 cross 16, because it should match the incoming channel size. And since you need an output of 28 cross 28 cross 32, you need to use 32 number of filters. And for this operation, you will have a computational cost of 28 cross 28 cross 32 into 5 cross 5 cross 16. That's something around 10 million. So the total number of parameters is something around 12.4 million parameters. With respect to, if you apply a 5 cross 5 convolution on this feature map, it would be something around 120 million parameters. So this is how you squeeze the feature maps and you reduce the number of parameters in any convolutional networks. As you know that in any classification networks, if you place a fully connected layer, or if you use very high dimensional filters into your network, it will increase the number of parameters in your networks. So it is recommended that try to use this network in networks wherever possible, and try to squeeze your network in terms of the number of parameters that you will train. Then the next concept I will repeat is inception. This is also already introduced in lecture 2. I will just go through again that why. So this is again a concept from Google, and it's motivated from the film Inception actually. So it's dreams within dreams, and here it is layers within layers. So what they say is you want to design a network. You are confused between which kind of operation you want to use. It's a 3 cross 3 convolution or 5 cross 5 convolution, or you want to use some pooling operations. You are confused between all these kind of operations, which one you want to do, which one you want to use, and in which sequence you want to use them. Then Google came up with this block, inception block, where they place all these operations in parallel. So you have 1 cross 1 convolution, 3 cross 3 convolution, 5 cross 5, and then they have a pooling operation. And mind it that you can change the dimension of these filters. It's up to your design choice. So the main idea is that it's a single block where the same data will be directed to different kind of filters. And in fact, you will have some pooling operations, and 1 cross 1 convolution means you are just squeezing the channel size. You are retaining the same feature. And once you operate on your original feature map, these convolutional operations or the pooling operations, the output will be concatenated across filter. And this will be a feature map which is a representation of all the operations that you have performed in this stage. So this is inception block. It was made out of this confusion people were using, that okay, what kind of convolutions or what kind of operations should I perform and in which sequence. So you just use inception. So using this inception and network in networks and some few fabrications that were done on video level networks, Google DeepMind came up with this I3D networks. It is called inflated 3D networks. And why this kind of optimization is important? Because video level networks, as I explained in C3D, they are very time consuming networks. They are very hard to train. They have huge number of parameters. You need optimization in terms of the number of parameters. And that is why these kind of tricks are important. And that is what DeepMind did in this network. So there are three main concepts that have been used. One is inflation, bottleneck, and concept of inception. So let's see what is this inflation. Inflation is they started with an image neural network. So you want to train a video, but they started with image. Why? Because in order to understand videos, you need some knowledge of images. But when you use video level networks, you don't have any pre-training on images. That's why they start training from images and they inflect the network into 3D. What is this inflation of 3D? That is, you have a single network, which is an image classification network, and then you just duplicate the classification networks one above the other. And when you stack them, you get a video network. It's similar, like you have an image, you have a set of images and you get a video out of that. And here inflation is you have an image network, you duplicate the image networks and you get a video network out of that. This is the concept of inflation. In this way, they make sure that all their kernels are pre-trained on ImageNet. So they have a knowledge of the image domain. So it will be easier for them to understand the video level information. The next trick was to use this 1x1 convolutions in their video level networks. So this is the network, the whole I3D network, where video is the input and the output are the predictions. Now in this network, you can see there are 1x1x1 convolutions. So it's 3-dimensional, so you have to use 1x1x1, space 1x1 and time cross 1. These kind of operations, they will just squeeze your channel size. And this will ensure that you have less number of parameters. The other trick they have used is to use this INC. What is this INC? They are inception modules. How they have used this inception module? So they have some feature map. They redirect it first to some 1x1x1 convolution. That means every time they process their feature maps with some 3x3 convolutions, because it's 3x3x3 space and time. It's no more 3x3, it's 3x3x3 since you have space and time. So in order to have this kind of spatio-temporal operations, they first squeeze the channels with this 1x1x1 convolutions inside the inception module event. So once they perform this squeezing operation, they redirect it to 3x3x3 convolutions. You can use 5x5x5 or 7x7x7, it's up to you, but they have suggested that this is some optimal operation which is beneficial for video level networks. And in fact, they use some max pooling operations and only 1x1x1 operations. And then they concatenate across the channels and then they get the feature maps. And the feature map over here in the previous layer and the feature map size in the next layer are almost same. It's not almost same, but it is the same. They make sure that they have the same size across space, time. But the channel size may differ because you have this concatenation operation across channels. So throughout this network, if you have some inception modules, the size across space and time will remain same when you are using inception modules. Only the channel size will differ. The space and time will be affected only and only if you have some max pooling operations like here. You can see 1x3x3 operations. That means they have tried to use some asymmetric operations. 3x3x3 max pooling would make sure that you have symmetric operations across space and time. But I3D takes in 64 frames of images and each images are of size 224x224. That means the time is 64 frames and spatial dimension is 224x224. So the spatial dimension is actually large as compared to the time dimension. That's why they use these asymmetric operations to squeeze the images more as compared to time in their early layers. This makes sure that the space and time is handled in an optimal manner. So these are the tricks that have been used in i3D, and they have outperformed the state of the art at that time. And still now we are using this i3D network from Google DeepMind. But they have their own limitations as well. These are spatiotemporal kernels that are applied throughout the video. But if you are having some activities like cutting bread or inserting tea, these are actions which have very subtle motion. Why I am telling you about activities? Because in the last lecture I have said that since I have to consider a video classification problem to make you understand the different networks, so I have given an example that activity recognition is a video classification problem. That's why with respect to video classification problem, I am giving these limitations of 3D CNNs. One of the limitation of this 3D CNNs, or specifically i3D, is they don't care about subtle motion that the humans are having in the videos. Or even you can have activities which are very similar to one another, like clapping and rubbing two hands. And the network doesn't perform anything special to take care of or to distinguish between these two actions. And also, convolutional networks are not view adaptive. So if you capture a video from one view and you test it from another view, it's most likely that your CNN won't recognize what kind of activity you are performing. On the other hand, in image-based networks, you can do this using data augmentation. So you can augment your data from different views and feed your classifier. But this kind of operation is not straightforward in video networks because you need to do many other operations like tracking, or you need to make sure that all the images are aligned when you are giving input as a video. That's why these CNNs are not view adaptive. You can see that drinking from cup, the picture is taken from two different views. So if you are training it on one view and testing it on other view, it's most likely that the classifier will fail to understand what kind of activity you are performing. So what next? We need to give some other kind of perception, some kind of operation that these 3D CNNs should have, because the ultimate task is that make computers able to make computers as efficient as humans. So what does humans, how does humans perceive the environment? They don't only grasp knowledge just like that. They have some other kind of operations happening inside your brain. And this is something we are trying to incorporate in this convolutional networks. So let's talk about this attention mechanism. What is this attention mechanism? Let me introduce this topic very slowly. So let's come back to images. You have an image where there is a bird, you can see, and you try to classify that, okay, in this image you have a bird. So your input to the classification network will be this image. When you have this whole image, let's say this is the whole image, you want to classify there is a bird. Do you really need the whole image, or you just need this particular region where the bird is there? Isn't it? So the thing is that given an input image, you don't need the whole information. There is only a certain part in the image which is important for your task that you are performing. Just like here, this is the bird that you are trying to classify, which is important. But this is something the neural network is not aware of. The neural network doesn't know where is the bird. So there should be some kind of operation you need to employ in your neural network and explicitly tell the neural network that, okay, see, here is the bird, And this is where you need to focus on while classifying what are you looking for. For example, here is a girl drinking water. And if you want to classify that what kind of activity this person is performing, to you, it is very clear that, oh, she is drinking water. But what you are doing with the neural networks, you take the whole video, give it to the neural net. But do you really need all the information? This is, I used a human detector to detect the human, and I resized the human from a particular point in the video. So this is just an image with where a human detector has been used. So this image, if I give you this image, you will be certainly able to understand that, oh, she is drinking water. In fact, the neural network will also understand that she is drinking water. So the first example was in the image domain, where we have given a bird. You want to classify the bird. You just need the information where the bird is located. In the second example, here is a girl drinking water. If I give you this video, you just need a single image and this human person bounding box to understand what kind of activity she is performing. But what if I give you this image? There is a video. Out of that video, I have taken just a single image, and I'm asking you what kind of activity it is. Is it wearing shoes or taking off shoes? It's difficult to understand, right? That's why in videos, you just cannot take care of the images. You have to keep in mind about the temporal context. Now, if I give you two images, this is taken from the first interval of time, and this is taken from the later on interval of time. Now you can understand, okay, in the first images, the person was not wearing the shoes, and now he is. So the activity is wearing shoes, and it is not taking off shoes. That means when I'm talking about images, in images, you need to focus on where the object is located. So you need something called spatial attention. But in videos, you need spatial attention to see that, oh, she is drinking water. And you also need to understand that which of the time frames are important in a video. Therefore, you need a temporal attention as well. So in videos, you need spatio-temporal attention. And that's the difference between images and videos. But before that, something we also understood is that what is attention? Because you are given a video or an image, you have to focus on a particular region, the region of interest in the image or in the video. And that is what we call is attention. And even when humans perceive information, they don't look throughout the environment. They are just focused into a particular region where they have interest in. And that is what we call is attention mechanism that is inbuilt in our human brains, but computers don't have. So we need to have some kind of operations to explicitly mention the neural networks that, okay, these are the spaces where you need to concentrate on or focus on. So this is, let's say this is an image captioning task, and you given an image, you want to caption that image, that a bird flying over a body of water. In image, so if you remember my last lecture yesterday, there are one to many recurrent networks, sequential networks, which can do this image captioning task. Given an image, you can find out what is the sentence associated with this image. A bird flying over a water body is something you want to predict given this image. And therefore, you need to understand that there is a bird and there is a water body in the background. For this, you need to focus on different parts of your input image. in order to do this captioning. So in attention mechanism, you have these two categories. One is hard attention and another is soft attention. So let's understand what are these hard attention and soft attention. Hard attention is you make some hard decisions that, okay, you want to classify a bird, here is the bird, and you give that particular input to the neural network. You don't give the whole input image to the neural network. Instead, you just give a part of the image to the neural network. So without seeing the input image, there is a kind of operation through which you try to choose that which part of the input image is important and which part of the input image should be fed to your convolutional neural network. This kind of algorithm, so this kind of algorithms need some kind of distribution learning, and they are generally solved using reinforcement learning. And the other area of research is soft attention, where we take the whole entire image as input to the neural network, and then we dynamically try to understand that, okay, inside this whole image, which are the important region of interests. And then we train this model end to end. So in this, I will come to this part. Soft attention is something we will be covering more in details. So before going into the details of this hard attention and soft attention, let us first understand the task we are performing. You have been given a bird which is flying, and there is a water body in the background, and you want to do this image captioning task. And for that, you need encoder and decoder. Encoder is a CNN, which will give you the image level features. And these image level features will be fed to a recurrent neural network, say NSTM. And this NSTM at every time step will try to find out the words. The first word, then bird, then flying, and then over the sea or something. This is the image captioning task that we will be performing. So what does hard attention does? Here it is the given input image, H cross W cross 3, and you have to train, and so you first try to find an image level feature, and that will be input to your LSTM. But before giving to the LSTM, what it does is it tries to estimate a bounding box. What is bounding box? Bounding box is this red box which says that, oh, this is the region where you should concentrate on. You don't need to take the entire image. Just take this red box and give it to your CNN, get the features, give it to the LSTM. This is what we call is hard attention. You are not taking input the entire image, but you are just taking a part of the image. So you are estimating that which part of the image is important prior to giving it to the neural network. And this kind of function is not differentiable, and you cannot backpropagate your neural network end to end. And they are usually solved using reinforcement learning. I will not get into details with this, but I just want to say that this is the concept of hard attention. You cannot train you cannot train the neural network end to end, and that's why these kind of attention mechanisms are not so popular as of now, but this is the future according to me. The next thing is soft attention. So as I said, in soft attention, the entire image is input to your CNN. So the entire image is input to your CNN, you get some features which is of dimension n cross d. Then you feed it to the LSTM. The LSTM will try to estimate an attention weight. So firstly, it will try to estimate an attention weight A1. This A1 will be multiplied with the features, the convolutional features, which will be again input to your LSTM. And of course, the word that you are trying to train with, because it's an image captioning task. So At every time step of the LSTM, you will predict the word and you will also predict the attention weights. And this attention weights will reweight your convolution and feature map. And this attention weights, I will come to this part that how you train these attention weights. So these attention weights are nothing but some values, some normalized values, which you directly multiply with your features, the image features. It will reweight based on the time step you are in the sequential network. And in this way, the soft attention mechanism takes place. So this is the whole framework. So you have the input image, you have the convolutional feature map extraction. You can use any kind of network out here. It's an image based network. You get the feature map. This is the feature map you get. So the feature map will be input to your LSTM. The LSTM will predict some attention weights. It will reweight your feature map, and that will be again fed to your LSTM. And in this way, you will try to predict at every time step the corresponding words, like a bird flying over a body of water. And you can see when it is saying bird, then this feature map is trying to have more focus on the bird. And when it is saying water, then the feature map, the salient features are all the regions except the bird, which is the white region. So this is how soft attention takes place. But how do you use the attention weights, or how do you learn the attention weights? So you have some kind of, so this is just an example for you to understand that let's assume you get an output of the CNN features in this form, A, B, C, D. So it's a matrix of A, B, C, D. So the RNN or the LSTM that you are training, which will give you some attention weights for this convolutional feature map, you will have 4 probabilistic values for each of these grids. They are PA, PB, PC, PD. And you train them with this constraint that PA plus PB plus PC plus PD should be 1. That means you apply a softmax, because what does softmax do? They normalize your values to 1, in between 0 to 1. That means here you will learn a probabilistic distribution which will sum up to 1, and this will actually tell you that out of this ABCD, when you multiply this with this probabilities, then it will tell you that which of these A, B, C, D are important. And that is what you say is a context vector. Because now when you are feeding the RNN, you are feeding the RNN also a word, that it is a bird or it is flying. So when this word is also fed in the RNN, at the same time it is also learning the attention weights. And these attention weights are multiplied with the convolutional feature map, and the convolutional feature map will reweight itself to focus on the salient part in the images. And that's why this feature will be called contextual vector. So this is something, a kind of visualization you will have for soft attention. So this is the input image. So when you are trying to say it's some random points where you are trying to focus on. And so these are the soft attention heat map, and this is the hard attention heat map. In hard attention, you have only the center from where you will be taking out the bounding box, and it is not as good as you see in the soft attention part. You can see when it is bird, it is actually trying to highlight the bird, and when you are saying water, it is actually trying to estimate that what is the water body or what is the background. It is trying to highlight everything apart from the bird. So that is the concept of soft attention. So what are the things that how we perceive as humans the environment, we are trying to make the computer learn in similar way. So inside attention mechanisms, we have these two techniques, which are also very important. Um Self-attention and visual attention for action recognition. There is another concept, spatial transformer network. I won't go in the details, or I won't explain STN, because this is in fact a very big topic and you need maybe 1 or 2 hours of lecture to really understand what is this. But this is a bridge between hard attention and soft attention. This was also proposed by Google in 2015. And this is self attention. This is again from Google, and visual attention for action recognition. It is I will just try to show you how attention is used in videos. So let's talk about self attention. What is self attention? It's what we call is intra attention or context gating. So given an input feature, you use the input to refine itself and say that, oh, inside this input image, what is important? You don't use any extra information. You use the same information to refine itself. That's why it is called self-attention or intra-attention. So for example, here you have this sentence, the FBI is chasing a criminal on the run. And the output should be something like, so you are trying to feed an LSTM DIR and then FBI. When FBI is the input to your LSTM or any sequential network, it should focus on the previous important word. For example, when you are saying run, it is focusing on the other important words in the sentence. So it is a image description task where you are trying to predict this kind of sentence. And in order to predict this kind of sentence, every word is having a relationship with its prior words. Maybe criminal is in, when you are trying to predict criminal, criminal is related with a, because how many criminal is there? And somehow it is related with is according to this example. So this is a kind of contextual information that you are trying to model. That in a sentence, the words are connected with which other words in the sentence. For that, you have this self-attention. So this is a bit of complicated description and a complicated diagram in this slide. But this is what, if you Google it, self-attention, this is what you will find out. And they have this concept of key query value. But I tried to make several slides to simplify this concept in order to make you understand what is self-attention. So I won't be following this particular slide, but I will jump to something very simpler. So let's understand what is this self-attention. Given an input feature, which is here, these are your input feature of sequence length, say n equals to 5, and you have a feature size of d. You want to predict, or you want to route your information to your output layer, right? That is what you want to do. How you can do this? So this is an input feature, and this is an input layer where you have the input feature. You want to route this information to your output. One basic way of doing this is you use a fully connected layer, or it's a multi-layer, or it's a perceptron. So all the nodes are connected with all the output nodes. That means, because you need a kind of contextual output, the output which will have some contextual information, where the words have some relation with other words. What is the best way to do that? You just use some fully connected layer. Or if you use this kind of connections, what is this kind of connections? If you see, this is nothing but convolutional network. So you have only, so for this output, you have input as these two nodes. For this output, you have these three nodes. So these are only the neighboring nodes which are taken into account to predict your output nodes. This is basically the concept of convolutional operations. You just take care of your local neighborhood while predicting a value. But what self-attention does is, you have all your connections. Each output node will be connected with each output node. It is like a dense layer, but not exactly, because these connections will have a kind of soft weights, and it will tell you that, okay, if you are trying to predict this node from all the input nodes, which input nodes will be given more importance. You will learn that importance. That's why they are calling this self-attention. For this, you have three concepts. One is key, that is, what type of information this node contains at the input. Query is at the output, and it says that what kind of information do you need from the lower layer. And then value is the whole information, that is the sequence of n equals to 5, which you are routing to your output. So you have these three concepts: input, that what kind of information is there in this each nodes. Output is at each output node, what kind of information do you need from the lower layer. And then you have this whole value. This is the whole information that you are routing to your output layer. How do you do this? So you have this input X, you have this query. So this query is projected. The input is projected to a query using 1x1 convolutions. Then you have the key. They are also projected to some 1x1 convolution and projected to key. And similarly, the whole input X is projected to value using 1x1 convolutions. So X is the input, and this X is projected into three parts, or three representations: query, key, and value. Once you have this query, key, and value is what? The information, the whole information that you are trying to refine. So you have this query and you have this key. They are of the same dimension. You multiply query with the transpose of key and use a softmax, because softmax will normalize your values of this multiplication, or the product of this query and transpose of key will give you a matrix. And if you apply softmax on that matrix, it will actually tell you, it will actually give you a square matrix which is normalized with this softmax activation, and it will actually tell you that in this value, which elements are important. So it is giving you some probabilities, and these probabilities are nothing but attention weights. This is what is called self-attention. You have an input. It is projected into three representations: query, key, and value. Value is the whole information that you are trying to refine. You have this key and query. Multiply this key and query with one of them being transposed and apply a softmax activation. You will get a square matrix which is normalized between 0 to 1. And this normalized matrix is then multiplied with the value. And the resultant matrix Z is the refined matrix which is obtained from X. So this is what happens in, so this is the simplest way of understanding self-attention, I would say. And there are other concepts like multi-heads, like it is given here. What is this multi-head? So you have one head. So it is just the attention mechanism applied on a subset of the channels, and you call them one head. And you apply this on subset of many channels. Here you have each number of heads. Each head is trying to refine the feature where the feature is subset of the original feature, and you have each such number of heads. So you will have each such output features, and you just concatenate them, and this is what we call is multi-head attention. But that's not important. The important thing is what is self-attention, and you understood what is self-attention. And this self-attention is used in not only in natural language processing, but in a number of tasks in video processing, or in audio processing. In all these kind of tasks, self-attention has gained its own importance. And most of the people in Silicon Valley are using this self-attention mechanisms to uh, make their systems more effective and efficient. So I just recap what I have explained. You have one convolutional feature map. You use some 1x1 convolution to project them. And these are your key query values. You apply a transpose operation on one of the feature map. You do this multiplication of the query and key. Apply a softmax. This is a matrix, what you will say is attention map. And this attention map is multiplied with the value. The value is nothing but the information that you want to refine. And the resultant will be the self-attention feature maps, which is the output. And the output dimension is similar to the input dimension. So X and O have same dimension. Now let's come to visual attention for action recognition. I'm just coming towards the end, and we understood what is self-attention. But attention, there are a number of attention mechanisms used in the state of the art, and they are also used in video processing. So I'm just giving you a glimpse of how attention mechanism is used for video understanding problems. One of them being from action recognition domain. So for action recognition, you process the images in a video. For every image, you get a CNN feature, just as I explained yesterday, CNN and STM. In CNN and STM, you firstly get the CNN features of the frames, and then you input them into your NSTM network. So this is the same network that has been used. The only difference is that the NSTM will learn the action classification label. So it will try to predict the action at each time step. And at the same time, it will try to also predict a kind of attention weights, that in this feature map, which part of the images are important. So this is the first time step. The input will be some random weights and the feature map. You feed it to the NSTM. This is a stacked NSTM with 3 NSTM layers. At the output, you first get the action classification label, and you also get a score N2. This N2 is multiplied with X2. What is X2? X2 is the next feature map of the next image. So it's the feature map of the next image. And this N2 is a kind of normalized, or the attention weights. It will be multiplied with your convolutional feature map. And this multiplication will make sure that, oh, which part of the image is important. And then that will be input to the next time step of your NSTM. And the same thing will take place till the end of your video. And this is how, this is what is the concept of visual attention for action recognition. And this is the kind of visualization you will get. So you see, as the image or as the video progresses, this is the feature map, which actually understands that, okay, in order to understand what kind of activity it is, which is the region in the different images that has to be focused on. And that's what we want with attention mechanism. This is another example where we try to understand that which human joints. This is something I have not explained the framework. I'm just trying to give you the visualization to just give you a perception of what is our objective. These are the kind of things that we want to do, is which human joint is important to predict that what the person is doing. So this is, I'm almost done. So yesterday I was asked a question about weekly supervised learning. That's why I kept one slide for weekly supervised learning, just to give you a glimpse of what happens in weekly supervised learning. So I have already told you the example of action classification problem, and there is another problem, action detection. In action detection, given a video, you try to find out where an action is happening and what are these actions. Because you can be given a very long video of, say, 5 minutes, and in this 5 minutes, maybe the actions are happening in some particular interval of time. So the task will be to identify that where are these actions happening and what are these actions. So you have basically two tasks. One is action localization and another is action classification. But if at the training time I am given a video where I have only the video level labels, that means I am only given the videos with saying that, okay, in this video I have glowing candles, in this video I have boxing or punching bag. At test time, what I want to do is, and in this video, you don't have only a single action, you have multiple actions. And these actions are happening in only short duration of time. And at test time, I want to predict that where are these actions happening and what are these actions. But the information about time is not provided to me at train time. But this is something I want to predict at test time. This is what we call is weekly supervised learning. That means you have a weak label and you want to test something and you want to get at inference something more. Mathematically, there is a more, it's a bit different from supervised learning, because you have two variables with which you have to differentiate and to get your gradients. But I'm just giving you an example in terms of application. So to conclude, attention mechanism has been very important, and this should be the kind of mechanism which should be used in neural networks to make them more effective and efficient. But there are still some questions, because we use this kind of attention mechanisms at the later on stages, like at the end, where you have high level features. But how can we incorporate them in the earlier layers? Because if you want to apply them in earlier layers, the pooling operations destroy the operation that you perform with attention. So it's not very straightforward. This is an open question. And with attention mechanisms, if you place it on top of some network, any network, 2D or 3D network, it makes your network more complex. So there are some work done nowadays. They are called replacing convolutions with attentional operations, and you call them fully attentional networks, and you don't call them fully convolutional networks. Maybe these are the direction towards the research that can be done nowadays. And another thing is, can you speculate the future events with this attention? Yeah, there are many people working on future prediction. And can we use this attention, because it gives you a contextual information and it can help you to learn about what can happen in future. And these are some interesting areas that needs to be explored on. And at the end, I would like to show you one demo that we have been doing at NRIA. So I have already shown you this video of this person drinking water. So we want to classify what kind of activity it is. And in order to do that, we use this attention mechanism. You have the skeletons skeletons are nothing but information about your poses. We give it to some RNN-based attention model. We get the soft weights or the attention weights for the different parts of the body. You have the left hand, right hand, and the full body. We get some representation from these right hand, left hand, and full body, and we try to use these attention weights on these representations. And that is how we classify an action. This is something we did in 2018. So yeah, that's it from my side, and I would like to end it with this. What we want is a machine that can learn from experience. So if you have any questions that you cannot ask me during this session, you can contact me at this email ID. Thank you.
Thank you, Srijan sir, for your nice presentation. Thank you very much, sir. I think Ovi sir has something to tell about. Ovi sir, are you there?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Aritru. Yeah, I am there. So now we can have like an open question and answer session on all these 4 lectures, like whatever concerns like we have. So even like I think it's possible to ask like even if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, like we'll be like happy to answer.
So every participant are requested to, if they want to answer, want to ask some question, they can ask the question unmuting themselves. Anyone have any question, they can unmute themselves and can ask the question. So the forum is open. Anyone, any question?
I think we don't have much questions.
Yes, the questions are actually asked in the previous classes also, previous lectures also.
Yeah. Like if we don't have much questions, then we can conclude. So
okay, sir. So we can conclude. So Rajiv sir, are you there, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you conclude, sir?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Srijan, and Abhijit also. That is, your lecture series is excellent. And personally, I am very impressed about your lectures, and our learners will receive some new information which will be helpful in their research as well as in the development area also. You will have indicated some new research directions also, and this field is a new field, and you have using the new technology also. So I think the learners will be so much benefited, and thank you very much, both of you, and you in future, and also your experience, sharing your valuable experiences for our students, and in future I expect you once again. Thank you very much, both of you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rajiv sir. Thank you, Srijan sir. Thank you, Ovi sir, for your nice presentation throughout the webinar. We from Department of CSE SKFG, I would like to thank Srijan sir and Ovi sir for this nice 4 days webinar series. We'd like to have you again. If I invite, we invite you even. We would like to be in our seminar also. So today we are closing the event. Before closing the event, I'd like to share the feedback. So everyone is requested to complete the feedback, because feedback completion is necessary to get the certificate. So the feedback link is given now in the chat box. So everyone is requested to fill up the feedback and then leave the group, leave the link. Thanks, Akash, for your compliments. We'd like to conduct some other webinars also. We'll be informing you in this group. So stay in this group. Everyone is requested to stay in this group. We'll be informing you of the other webinars we will be conducting. Yes, Aditya, the feedback link is there. The Uji just shared already again, so you can fill up the feedback form and then you could get the certificate. So the feedback link will be open for only 1 hour. So within the 1 hour, we are requested to fill up the feedback link. When you fill up the feedback link, after 4 or 5 minutes, you will receive the certificate. If you have any problem, I am writing the mail ID of my department. So this is cac@skfedu.in. I am writing the department link. This is cac@skf.edu.in. If you have any problem, you can email to this ID. We'll be solving the problem. Thank you all. Thank you, Surandima. Thank you, Nifina. Thank you, Akshay, Shivendu. Okay, so after you can give the feedback, you can leave. Yes, you can leave. I'll be sharing the video of today's record video after a few minutes to the group. So you'll get all the videos. Then also, if you have any doubt, you have which stats email, you can email him or you can email the questions to